Kathy Fox is the chair of the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, and she is in Gatineau, Quebec this morning. Ms. Fox, we're so pleased to have you on the program. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you for having me.
We were just listening to Ashley Burke's report there as she was laying out things beginning today, but I'm wondering if you could provide any further detail on the process. What will be happening as of today?
So the first thing that the investigators would do is to look at the recorders themselves to see if they're damaged, and then try to extract the memory boards from both the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder to assess whether they're damaged and what repairs might be necessary. And then, subject to that, they will extract data from the recorders and then be able to analyze it.
Okay, we'll come back to the question of damage in just a moment. So it is France doing the lead on this. Canada has a team there, as Ashley was reporting and as we know. And I'm wondering, will that team observe? Can the team members object or question? What specifically will Canada's role be?
So the TSB has sent 2 investigators to Paris, and along with the investigators from other countries that are participating. Because of the size, the physical size of the French recorder laboratory, as well as social distancing required due to COVID, only the BEA technicians as well as the Iranian investigators will be in the recorder lab, and the other countries, including our investigators, will be in a separate meeting room where they'll be watching the process via video. And then as the process continues, if there are any issues or once the data is extracted, then they will all be able to meet together live to discuss the investigation.
Okay, so Canada could then potentially have input. But there, as chiefly as an observer, are you comfortable with France and with French investigators taking the leading role here?
Very much so. We have a long-standing working relationship with the French BEA, as it's called, our equivalent, as well as with many of the other countries involved in this investigation. And the French BEA is very competent, very capable at doing this kind of download and analysis with these recorders.
You were hearing, as we all were in Ashley's report, one of the victim's family members telling her that one of his concerns is that the potential for these black boxes to be tampered with by Iran. Is that a legitimate concern? And I'm wondering, if so, will the investigators be able to detect that?
It's possible, I guess, but it's highly unlikely. And if any tampering occurred, it would likely be very observable to experienced investigators.
Okay, so that could allay perhaps some of his concerns. In the best case scenario, best case, what could we learn from these recorders?
Well, first of all, I can tell you, and literally this is just minutes old, that they have been successful at downloading the cockpit voice recorder data, and it is available for analysis. Now, what's on it, I can't say. I don't know, number one, and number two, I can't say. But they have been successful in downloading the voice recorder, and therefore that data could certainly share the discussions the crew was having in the preparation leading up to the departure and up to the missile strike. Were there any concerns about security? Were there any warnings given to the pilots? Did they have any inkling about what was to happen?
So you've just made some breaking news for us there, Ms. Fox. We appreciate that, because I was going to ask that. We heard again in Ashley's report, Mr. Vance saying that if it did continue for a couple of seconds after that initial missile strike, we may be able to have heard some of the reaction from the pilots. So we don't know whether we have had that yet, but you do know it is viable information. It hasn't been destroyed. They will have something to analyze, is what you're telling us now.
And to be clear, the only thing I can confirm is that there is data. It is available for analysis, but what it is, how good quality it is, I can't attest to that at this point.
Okay,
but
so that's the cockpit voice recorder. We don't know about the flight data recorder yet.
No, that's also, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of parameters that are captured by a flight data recorder on a second-by-second basis. When that data is extracted, it's not in an immediately usable format. It has to be interpreted, has to be validated, and then analyzed and compared with other sources of data like radar recordings, air traffic control recordings, and so on. So that work will take quite a bit longer.
How long? Ashley mentioned a period of weeks. When would we have an inkling at all of what they've been able to ascertain from this data?
It's really hard to say, and one of the things that remains to be determined is that analysis going to happen in France with the participation of all the countries, or is Iran simply going to take the data back to Iran and do their own analysis? That remains to be seen over the course of the next few days.
Which perhaps explains the statements that have come from the government and also from your agency this morning, echoing what the families have been calling for. Of course, they're desperate. And the wording of your statement is, this is just the beginning, and calling for a thorough and transparent safety investigation. You mentioned the possibility of this all being taken back to Iran, and Iran has delayed. It's offered differing versions of what happened, in fact. Really, it's been anything but transparent. So is a thorough and transparent safety investigation still possible at this point?
Well, I think that all of the countries are trying to work together to help Iran pursue the various lines of inquiry that we know need to be answered. What happened? Why were missiles shot at the aircraft? What were the reasons that the airspace wasn't closed? Why were commercial operators continuing to operate in an area of known conflict? And certainly we hope that those lines of inquiry will be pursued in depth so that we find out not only what happened, but also why, and what needs to be done to prevent such a tragedy from happening again.
And certainly those are similar questions we're hearing from the victims' family members. As I leave then, are you, again, knowing that you do have data to analyze from the cockpit voice recorder, are you more optimistic to get the answers to those questions you just outlined at this point this morning, knowing what you now know?
That remains to be seen, but it really is a question of how much new information will it gather. At the very least, we hope that it will give the investigators more insight into piecing together a sequence of events, and then from that, the why questions can be answered.
Thank you so much for the time, and really appreciate your expertise in all of this. We'll be following, obviously, very closely with you. Thanks, Ms. Fox.
Thank you very much.
Kathy Fox is the chair of the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, and again from Gatineau, Quebec this morning.